Let's go back to what he said about me. Yeah, he referenced me by name. In a flash of anger, it's written in the article, which is there at IndyStar.com, the Congressman reserved his strongest comments during our interview for WIBC talk show host Tony Katz, who's been sharply critical of Carson recently for refusing to denounce Farrakhan. Quote, I think what Tony Katz is doing on WIBC is hate speech. He's putting my life and my children's lives in jeopardy. He's jeopardizing the lives of staff members in my office. Now, that's the quote right there. And I looked at that, I said, oh my goodness. Putting his life in jeopardy, his family's life in jeopardy. What is he even talking about? Because, hate speech. What is he saying? All I've done is taken stories that are in the Washington Post, Fox 59, Wish TV, Daily Caller, other places, and I'm talking about them. I'm sharing them. I'm compiling them. See how these things connect. See how he says one thing in one place and then another thing in another place. There's been a lot of deflection, commenting on, exposing that level of deflection. And then I stopped because something about that quote isn't right. It's Malcolm Gladwell. It's Blink. Something's off. And I took a look at it again. Let's start from the beginning. I think what Tony Katz is doing on WIBC is hate speech. The normal talk would be, oh, he's just being a blowhard and trying to get ratings, and he's just bought and paid for by the Koch brothers. It would be one of those. But no, it's not what he said. He said, I think what Tony Katz is doing on WIBC is hate speech. Not, I think what he is doing. Not what I think Tony is doing. I think what Tony Katz is doing. First, he used my full name. It's not a flowing conversation. He used my full name so people would use and know my full name. And then he says doing on WIBC so people would know it's a radio station is hate speech. We can laugh at the first part of that, right? That here's a guy who won't denounce Louis Farrakhan and saying I am guilty of hate speech for simply utilizing stories in press that he approves of, like the Washington Post, to prove his connection to an anti-Semite and a bigot. That's not hate speech. It's a lot of things. It's not hate speech. Let's not kid ourselves. But why Tony Katz and WIBC? Let's start with the fact that this is an attack on radio. And then the hate speech comment makes much more sense. Andre Carson is flat out attacking radio. He's trying to put pressure on me. But more importantly, he's trying to put pressure on you for listening, for being a part of what we do every single day, for sharing the stories that we're putting out there, the news that's being made, to make sure that it's understandable, these connections and how they work. That's what he's doing. He's not just talking about me there. He's talking about you. He is saying to you that you are guilty of hate speech for listening to someone like Tony Katz. He's also very possibly making sure people know who I am, which is in and of itself strange. What isn't the right thing to do to ignore me? Right? I'm a radio host. You're a congressman. You mentioned me by name, first name and last name. You use a phrase like hate speech. We'll get back to that in a second. Secondly, the whole conversation of attacks on his family. I have never mentioned his family ever. I have never once mentioned his family. I didn't know the man was married. I didn't know he had a family. I have no idea. I have mentioned on the air Jessica Gale, who is his press secretary, because it's the press secretary. Just like I've mentioned Mark Lauder, who used to be the press secretary for Vice President Pence. Just like I've mentioned Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who's the press secretary for the president. It's not, some statement was put out by Jessica Gale, press secretary for Andre Carson. That's standard operating procedure. Why would you say it like this? He's putting my life and my children's lives in jeopardy. He's jeopardizing the lives of staff members in my office. This is simply false. You're a member of Congress. This is in the news. I am reporting it on the little radio doohickey thing I do. Why is that putting your family in jeopardy? And think of how personal that is. Why did Congressman Carson make it personal? What was the point of that? And started really getting into it. That doesn't make sense. The statement in and of itself doesn't make any sense. The comments, not only the idea that it's hate speech, that you would use my full name, that you'd mention WIBC, that you would claim, you would make it personal. You wouldn't make it professional. You wouldn't come at me as a radio host. You made it personal to your family. Why in the world would you do that? Oh. And that's when it hit me. Because we sat there, myself and my program director, my executive producer, producer Brian Baker. What is the point of this? And then it hit me. It hit me that what we see here and what we have here is a dog whistle. Well, not a dog whistle. This is a dog bullhorn. I want to say clearly, and without any question, no, Congressman Carson. It is not your family and your children's lives that are in jeopardy, the lives of your staff. This statement has you putting my family in jeopardy. Using my name, using the station name, saying this and making it personal is the dog bullhorn to, hey, look what this guy is saying about me. I wonder if that upsets any of my supporters. This is a dog whistle. This is a dog bullhorn. That's exactly why it's here. This statement doesn't make any sense. This commentary about me is not in any way connective. It's not natural. It's not free-flowing. This was planned. This is an organized series of thoughts for a purpose. And I want you to know I take it seriously. This is the kind of stuff they used to say about President Trump. He's just whipping up the base, just whipping up his supporters. I made 2 phone calls today. I made one to my wife, who I never talk about on air. I mean, I mentioned wife, that's it. You know, I didn't talk about having a family until I moved to Indianapolis. I never talked about it on air. I never talked about it. People who knew me for years, they didn't know. I keep them very private. I keep my life in that way private. I don't think I should be putting it out there. I made a call to her to let her know this article is out there. And then I made a call to a local security company who's coming out today. Andre Carson's family was never in jeopardy. Their father is a congressman. Commentary about what a congressman does in his relationships is part of the game. Congressman Andre Carson, as I see it, used my name, and which is okay, used the station and used this falsehood, this flat-out lie about putting his lives and children in jeopardy to tell his supporters, hey, look what he's doing to me. Maybe that's not okay. First call I made was to my wife. Second call I made was to a security company. He's raising my profile. That's another crazy part. You're supposed to ignore me. He made sure to mention me first name and last name, my station. Make this claim about his life and his children's lives in danger, making it hyper-personal. He raised my profile. And he did it for a reason. Because this is not a dog whistle, this is a dog bullhorn. This is putting my family at jeopardy, and I am acting accordingly. Understand also, I'm not leaving. You can't run me out of anywhere. Maybe that's your dream. I don't know. But you took this, Congressman Carson, to a whole new level. And still, we're not getting to the crux of the issue. Because it's not about me. It's about your association with a bigot and an anti-Semite named Louis Farrakhan. A guy who hates gay people. A guy who hates white people. A guy who nobody rationally, willingly wants to associate with. And you're still associating with him in public and in private. This isn't about me. This isn't about your lies about anybody in your family being in jeopardy. This is about you trying to deflect from the fact that you have a relationship with Louis Farrakhan, and in this interview with Tim Swearens at the Indy Star, you would not denounce him. You won't denounce your relationship with Louis Farrakhan. That's the story. Facts are not hate speech. Facts are facts. So let's make sure we have them. Louis Farrakhan is a bigot and an anti-Semite. Andre Carson has met with Louis Farrakhan publicly and privately. Andre Carson, who doesn't want to have anybody know about these relationships in public, immediately pushes the dog whistle, which is to say the dog bullhorn, that I am putting his family in danger, lying through his teeth, when in doing so, he puts my family in danger by whipping up supporters, by ginning up supporters who may want to do something about it. These are the facts. Andre Carson is not good enough for Indianapolis, and Indianapolis has to vote him out of office immediately. I'm Tony Katz.